Introducing 100 Days of Code with Treehouse. What is 100 Days of Code? It's a long-standing coding challenge created by Alex Calloway, and it's simple. Commit to learning every day for 100 days. The amount that you learn in that short time frame will change your life. Whether you want to level up your skills or jumpstart a new career, commit to the challenge. You'll be shocked by how much you learn and accomplish. You'll have the full support of the Treehouse community of students working with you. We'll be sending you motivational emails, clips from our 100 Days of Code podcast, featuring advice, tips and tricks from developers, and so much more. There's never been a better time to commit to your learning. Join us.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hello again. It's been a while. I haven't done a live stream in about a month, so I'm excited to be back. Hoping that all of you are doing well out there. I am a software development instructor at Treehouse. My name is Gil, for those of you who don't know. So that's teamtreehouse.com. And at Treehouse, I teach full stack JavaScript development and front-end web development. And yeah, if you've been checking out some of our live streams lately and you're here again, welcome back and thank you for tuning in. We all really appreciate it. So in my previous live stream, we talked a little bit about creating interactivity with JavaScript and the DOM. And we focused on a few things, DOM events and delegation, listening for events or user actions. Also talked about really any DOM manipulation that might happen in response to a user's action. So today we'll do a little more with JavaScript and the DOM. This is actually the final one I'll do on this topic in particular. But I'm going to cover a few other things. So I'm going to talk about how to create DOM elements and dynamically insert content into the page. Also more techniques for removing elements from the DOM. And yeah, we'll get into adding content into the page programmatically by way of forms and more. We also have our Treehouse staff moderating the chat. So if you have questions about anything covered in this presentation or about Treehouse in general, feel free to ask away. Those questions will be sent my way. Cool. So let's quickly do a review of some of what I've covered last week, or not last week, really, last month. In my live stream on DOM events and responding to user actions. So I talked about how the browser can do something in response to an event, right? Like a mouse click, a mouse scroll, form submit, and so on. And in order to have the browser do something in response to one or more of those events, we have to write JavaScript that listens for a specific event, then handles the response to it. Now, the way you do that programmatically is with this thing called an add event listener function, and that waits for an event to happen, and then it runs some function in response to that event. And there are a whole lot of events that you can listen for. We looked at some like click, change. There are others like submit, which we'll look at today, and then there's mouse down, mouse up, and so on and so on. And I mentioned that each is represented by this special object called the event object. And each event listener function gets the event object passed to it as a parameter, and it has lots of useful information about the event, as well as a few methods we can use to help us handle the event. And finally, we looked at this really cool technique, this useful technique called event delegation that lets you place only one event listener on a parent or ancestor element, and then that event listener sort of analyzes any events that bubble up from its child elements, then performs some action in response. So now we're going to dive into some new stuff while using some of these techniques I mentioned. And I'm going to continue working on this fun little pet directory page from previous live streams. If you want access to all the code I'm writing, check out the link posted in the chat, and you can follow along if you want. Why not? So let me bring up the project files here in my text editor. And in my JavaScript file in app.js, we have some event listeners here from the last time. For example, we were using event delegation to handle any checkbox changes from an ancestor node, and what that's doing, it's adding that blue border around a selected item, for example. We're also showing and hiding a pet image within the pet list with this event listener here. Now, right now the page content is all hard-coded in the HTML. Notice all the list items here inside the pet list. So now we're going to add it dynamically or programmatically with JavaScript. So what I'll do is I'll delete all these list items from the pet list. All right. So now over in my JavaScript file, I left some to-dos here as comments. So first, we're going to dynamically insert any pet data, insert pet data, and load it into the page, right? When the browser loads the file, the HTML file. And then we're going to look at removing any checked or selected pets upon clicking this remove button here. Let me refresh this remove button here. And then we're going to create and insert pets on form submit. All right, so we have this file here named pets.js, and it contains an array of pet objects, and it's linked to index.html, as you can see here. So that means that the browser, loads pets.js first, and then it loads app.js, giving it access to any JavaScript written in pets.js. So we can access that pets array from within app.js. So now let's display this information on the page, right? We'll need to access each pet object in the array and display the pet's name, breed, and photo. Now to do this, we can use a loop, right? Or any array iteration method over in app.js. So we're going to loop through each element of the array and build a string. Let's do that. Let's build a string that contains all the pet information and then sort of inject that HTML string as content. So I'll start by declaring a variable named HTML, and I'll set it to an empty string. So this is going to hold a string of HTML that I'll build in the loop or in the iteration method, while iterating over that array, and then render it out to the document or web page. All right, so now I'll iterate through the pets array, right, over each pet object to build the list. So I'll do pets.for each, and so let's say for each pet, we'll do something. So I'm going to use the addition assignment operator to build my HTML string. So I'll do HTML plus equals, and I'll assign it a template literal. And I'm going to build the HTML template for each pet, and that's going to be a list item. So in here, I'll include a set of li tags. And for the pet name, I'll interpolate pet.name. So for example, Joey the Australian Shepherd. So let's do the, and then I'll interpolate the breed with pet.breed. And here I'm accessing the values of each pet object here. So name, breed, and the other one is photo. So let me add an image tag here, and I'll interpolate the file name, right? So we're going to reference the images in this image folder. So we'll say source equals image for the directory path, then interpolate the pet.photo. And let's not forget our alt attribute. We'll set that to pet.breed. And one more thing, we had our input field that we used to select pets, so we'll do an input type checkbox. Right, that looks good, except for the closing tag here. All right. So next, let's display the pet information on the page. So to do that, I'm going to use the inner HTML property. And what that does, it updates the inner HTML content of an element. In this case, is going to be this pet list unordered list, which is this right here. So below this iteration method, let's do pet list dot inner HTML. And what am I going to set it equal to? Well, the HTML string assigned, the string assigned to the HTML variable. Cool. So again, inner HTML is a property that's used often when working with the DOM, and it's used to get or set the HTML inside an element. And here's going to replace any existing contents of that UL with new content. In this case, the list items. So let's see if that worked. Pet list for each is not a function. Right. So what's happening here, I'm referencing the UL instead of the pets array, right? So small typo there. And there we go. So now we can apply the border around when selected, and we can do the show and hide just as before when the list items were hard-coded. Cool. All right, so next, let's see. I have a question here. It's, hey, Gil, I always enjoy your videos on Treehouse. Thank you very much. I have more of a request than a question. Can we update the Angular videos? Yeah, we've discussed that in the past. Nothing in motion yet, but stay tuned. We've gotten requests from other folks as well, but no plans in motion yet. All right, so where was I? So yeah, so I talked about removing elements, right? So how about we attach an event listener to our remove button here, right? So we're able to remove any selected item when clicked, because right now there's nothing happens. So let's wire this up to an event listener. Now, last time I went over one way you can do this. I did it with DOM traversal, right? So I iterated through each checkbox and then checked for ones that were checked. If it was, then we traversed up to that checkbox's parent node, the list item, and then removed it by calling the remove method on it. So this time we'll keep it a little bit simple. We'll check if the list item contains the class selected, which is what makes it, gives it that blue border. And if it's selected, if it does contain that class selected, we'll remove it. So it's one less step. So what I'll do first is I'll grab a hold of this button element in my app.js file. So up top, I'll assign the button to a variable. Let's say const button. Document.query selector. And we'll target the button with the class, with the ID button remove. And yeah, then I'll set up my event listener on the button. So down here, we'll listen for the click event, because that's, we want it to happen on click. So let's do button.add event listener, passing it the string click, followed by the callback. And there's probably several ways I could do this. So what I'll do first is I'll get the children elements of the pet list UL with the pet list with the dot children property, right? So I'll do pet list dot children, and then I'll assign that to the variable pets. So what I'm doing here, this children property returns a live HTML collection containing all the child elements of the node, right? In this case, it's the list items inside of the pet UL, what we're injecting into here. Now, as I've talked about in previous live stream, an HTML collection is kind of like an array, but we can't use array iteration methods on it, like for each, for instance. Now we could maybe, do this, use the spread operator here to copy these items into a new array and then iterate over it with for each. But I won't do that. I'll use one of my favorite loops, which is the for of loop, to do that, because it's super flexible in that way. Now, to backtrack a little bit, we can do pet list.child nodes, and that returns a node list, right? And then we'll be able to iterate through it, by way of for each, for example. But that's a little bit trickier because node lists also contain text nodes, and I just want to iterate over the elements. In this case, just the li. So I'll do .children, and then I'll set up my loop here. So let's say for const pet of pets. So I'll iterate through each pet of the pet list, and I'll check if a pet contains the class selected. So to do that, I can say, if pet.classlist.contains the string selected. And what this does is it gets the list of classes set on an li element using pet.classlist, and then it tests for the existence of the selected class in the list, and it returns true or false, right? So if it does in fact contain selected, we'll remove the selected item from the document by calling remove on the pet variable. And this method, as expected, as you might expect, removes the element or DOM node from the tree. So now this should remove any checked item. So let's see. So I'll select these two, click remove selected, and make sure there's no console errors. Yeah, so let's do that. Okay, good. So it's working. Awesome. All right, moving on. So it's great that, we're getting all the pet data from a JavaScript file, and we're creating an HTML template out of it and displaying as content on the page. But what about creating and inserting your own pet programmatically by way of submitting a form, for example? So now let's look at how we might do that. Now, let's see. I could leave this code here, but let me comment it out for this part so we can insert all new content into the page. So I'll comment out my first to do here. And excuse me, in index.html, I have this form element and h2 heading here. It's currently commented out. So I'll uncomment it. And I'm keeping this super simple. The form has two input fields and a submit button, and you can see what that looks like in the browser. Has the name and photo URL field. We'll just type the file name of a photo here in the image folder. Good. Now in app.js, let's scroll down here to do 3, create and insert pets on form submit. So I'll start by creating a function named create pet. Sounds good. And in the function, I'll assign my two input fields to variables because I want to get their values, right? So let's do pet name. That one has the ID of pet-name. And let's do pet photo for the other one. All right, so next I'll create the pet list item. So I'll declare another variable here. Let's call it new pet. And again, assign it a template literal. And this is what I'm going to use for my li template, similar to what we just did. And again, I'll keep things simple for this example, nothing too fancy. So I'm going to interpolate the values for each input. So let's first create my li tags here. And for the name, I'll interpolate pet.name. Actually, back up. The input field is assigned to the variable pet name, so we want the value of that. So we'll interpolate pet name.value instead. We're not working with a loop here. So now that we're displaying the name, let's set up our photo. So we'll do image source. Again, I'll interpolate the file name of the photo. And to do that, I'll do petphoto.value. Let's not forget our alt attribute, and we'll do petName.value for this again. And the input, the checkbox. Right. Now let's insert the content assigned to this new pet variable into the document, right? So this time I'll use a different method. I'll use the insert adjacent HTML method. Now I already have a reference to the pet list node up here, so I can call insert adjacent HTML on it. So here, let's do pet list adjacent, insert adjacent HTML. And this method takes two arguments, a string instructing where inside the pet list we want to insert that new pet, and then the actual string you want to insert into that element, the HTML string. So I'm going to pass it the string before end. And what that's going to do, it's going to insert the content just inside the element, after or below any other content that might already be inside it. And I want to insert the new pet, right? So let's pass it the new pet variable as the second argument. Yeah, so what's the difference between insert adjacent HTML and the .inner HTML approach I used earlier? Well, insert adjacent HTML is a little bit faster, I think, and more efficient than setting the HTML directly with the inner HTML property. With inner HTML, you're always replacing what's in there with something new. With insert adjacent HTML, you're always sort of appending to the element, right? And this is helpful when dealing with lots of data. All right, so one more thing. Let's wire up this form to an event listener and a handler that inserts the new content on form submit. So first, I'll select the form and assign it to a variable. Let's do const form document.querySelector form. We're selecting the form tag here. And we want to listen for the submit event on the form, right? So down here, let's first try form.addEventListener submit. And let's first try, passing a reference to that create pet function. Let's see what happens when we do that. All right, so I'll type something here, and then let's say, oops, I'll see.jpg. And, the handler, it's kind of working, right? But there's a big issue here, right? Notice how the entire page refreshes when I click submit. And the page is reloading when the form is submitted, and you might see a quick flash of the new pet as it completely reloads. So this is the normal behavior of the form you're seeing, right? When you submit an HTML form, the browser is going to send the information to a URL specified by some action attribute you might set on that form. Now, we're not going to be sending any data out from this form, and I don't want to leave or reload the current page. So to prevent this from happening, the DOM event object provides a special prevent default method you can use. So back in my event listener, let's change this second argument here. So I'll pass it the callback with the event object, and I'll call event.prevent default. Now, after we're preventing the form's default behavior, I can then call the create pet function. And again, prevent default cancels the default behavior associated with an event, in this case, submitting the form. And it tells the browser, hey, if this event does not need to be explicitly handled, do not proceed with its default action, right? In this case, we just want to use the form to submit. We just want to submit the content into the page, right? So now let's try adding pets now into the list. So let's say Pugsley the pug. We'll do pug.jpg. Oh, we got some debugging to do here. Okay, so insert adjacent element. I think I called the wrong property. Insert adjacent element, indeed. Code completion. So here have insert adjacent element. Insert adjacent HTML is what I want. And that should work. Let's do bug.jpg. Yeah, there we go. So that added the bug and the image on form submit. Awesome. Let's try, actually one more thing. So notice that the input fields are not clearing upon clicking the submit button, right? We still see the name and the photo information here. Now, one way to clear all the fields from the form is by calling reset on the event target, right? Or in this case, the form itself. So in my event listener here, I can do event.target.reset. And let me refresh that. Let's do... And that clears the fields upon clicking submit. Let's try a couple more. Joey the Australian Shepherd, which is my dog. Yay. There we go. We see Pugsley and Joey. And, let's add one more. Patches the cat. And then, we're referencing, again, these are the images that are here in this folder. So I'm just referencing those for this example. Well, good. So now I can test removing a pet and see that it still works as expected. And we could even bring back this code up here, right, and add to the current list. So let me uncomment this code. Now, to add items to the beginning of the list instead of the bottom, I can change this first argument we're passing to insert adjacent HTML from before end to after begin, and that sort of adds it to the top of the list. So let's try Ernie the pug. Pug.jpg. And yeah, it adds it to the top. And good. Yeah. Yeah, and there we have it. Now keep in mind that there's lots and lots of other ways you might do a lot of what I covered here. I just showed you one way we could do it, and there's probably a whole lot we can do to refactor this code here. But, I might leave that to an upcoming live stream. Yeah, so that's all I have for you today, unless you have any more questions. I really hope that you enjoyed learning yet even more about the awesomeness of JavaScript and the DOM. And again, you can learn full stack JavaScript, front-end web development, and so much more at teamtreehouse.com. be sure to check out that free trial we always have going on for you there. I'm Gil H on Twitter if you want to follow me there. And if you want to learn more about upcoming live streams, be sure to check out our Treehouse Live page. And here you can sign up for notifications and add any upcoming live stream to your calendar. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. As always, be safe and well out there, and happy coding. Thanks so much. Bye.